Hello everyone, it's Saturday, and that means it's time for me to talk about an episode of an animated television series about superheroes. Today, I will be talking about the fourth episode of the Legion of Superheroes cartoon titled Fear Factory. This episode begins with the Legion in a cosmic storm when they see an old space station stuck in the middle of the storm. Saturn Girl hears voices on the ship with her telepathy, but Brainiac 5's technology senses nothing. Bouncing Boy is very cautiously terrified and starts quoting about 92 horror movies that this reminds him of. I'm glad that Bouncing Boy is getting a little bit more fleshed out here, as aside from Saturn Girl, he's the one character who has been consistently showing up in each episode who hasn't really been developed much at all. But I am curious, is this development going to disappear by the time we get to the next episode? I'm kind of thinking it will, but I guess we'll see. So the Legion come to the space station, and I poo you not, Igor from Pop Culture's Frankenstein greets them. The team quickly starts to disappear one at a time, and over the course of the episode, we find out that this entire space station is actually some kind of fear vampire that singles out someone, shows them their deepest fears, and then once that person gives in to their fears, the space station turns them into a painting on the wall. Superboy defeats everything, and everyone is happy. The end. I have to say, I really like the idea that for one episode, this show can take a genre of fiction and just straight up do a story in that genre. Just because this series is set 1,000 years in the future and out in the middle of deep space doesn't mean that a haunted house couldn't still exist. And since this is set in the middle of deep space 1,000 years in the future, that means that the haunted house story can be modified slightly to fit into this series. At least the episode has the opportunity to do that, but it doesn't quite get there. Saturn Girl's worst fear is a regular roller coaster that could exist today. Lightning Lad's worst fear is a clown doll that could exist today. It would have been nice to highlight that this show is not set in the present day, and these fear simulations the space station casts would have been the perfect place to do this. Likewise, I wish this show would do a better job of letting us know that Superboy is not a native to this time period. Sure, we probably know if we can figure out that this series is set in the future without watching the pilot episode, but I can't help but think that Superboy is not acting enough like a stranger in a strange land. He should be completely dazzled by just about everything he sees in the future, and his teammates should keep saying, "What's the big deal? It's just a dilithium crystal vortex." Sure, eventually, Superboy would get used to some of the oddities of the future, but I don't think 4 episodes would be enough time for him to get used to what all of this future has to offer. Just some food for thought, I think, that would make this show a little bit easier to swallow. A show set 1,000 years in the future should use that setting to its advantage. Instead of the show trying to make it seem as normal and present day as possible, why not use the future setting to tell new and interesting stories that you would not be able to tell in any other series? Just a minor nitpick really, but I suspect it will come to bother me more as I keep going with this series. Getting back to the fears of each Legion member, I think some of them are pretty good, but some of them are a little weak. Bouncing Boy's fear is basically just a culmination of every horror movie trope you can think of. Now, this is funny, don't get me wrong. During the first 8 minutes or so of this episode, we get references to Dracula, Young Frankenstein, and Ridley Scott's Alien, but I just don't see Bouncing Boy's greatest fear being monsters from monster movies. Given his familiarity with the genre of monster movies, he seems to be a fan. So why is this his greatest fear if he willingly indulges in these kinds of movies? And Lightning Lad, it's a little bizarre that his greatest fear of all time is a clown doll that he had when he was a kid. I get that that would be scary if you saw something that used to terrify you from your past, but I don't buy that this doll would be the worst thing Lightning Lad has ever had to deal with. Saturn Girl's fear of roller coasters, okay, I guess I can buy that. Brainiac 5's fear is that he will somehow be taken back into the collective at his homeworld of Kolu, I guess. This is maybe the most vague fear that we got, and I can't help but wonder if this will come up again later in the series. And Superboy's fear of losing those that he cares about, that's pretty generic, but I buy it. I do have a little bit of an issue with how easily this episode wraps up. All of the Legionnaires have been sucked into the space station except for Brainiac 5 and Superboy. Brainy downloads himself into the space station after he gives Superboy what we later find out is a backup system in case his body is rendered inert or whatever. Anyway, after Brainy has taken partial control of the space station, and he tells Superboy that he has to destroy the hardware controlling the ship, Superboy is worried that it will destroy Brainy as well. But Brainy tells him that there's no other choice. Superboy does it, and the other Legionnaires are freed. Now, my first question is, how did Brainy know that the Legionnaires and everyone else who is trapped on this space station would be released? What if Superboy breaking the computer just kept everyone trapped as a painting? I get that this happens because it's near the end of the episode, but it's sloppy anyway. And second of all, Brainy is a real anus, isn't he? He acts like he's going to be sacrificing himself, and he acts like Superboy has to kill Brainy in order to save everyone else. And then at the end of the episode, Superboy asks why Brainy didn't just tell him that he had a backup chip. Brainy gives some nonsense answer about how Superboy would not have been able to face his own fears if Brainy had told him. Brainy, it's not really your decision if a teammate needs to face his fears. Sure, it's good to do that, especially when other people are counting on you, but you could have saved your teammates and everyone else on that space station just as easily without being a craphead. Maybe Superboy should just throw Brainiac 5 into the sun and do everyone a favor. I know after 2 episodes of him kinda being a whiny jerk, and then just being a straight up jerk, I'm really getting tired of him. Overall, this episode is alright. It's more enjoyable than the previous episode, but I still feel like this series isn't quite where it could be. It has enormous potential, but I don't think it's quite reached it yet. We'll see if it does, or if I'm just being unrealistic with my expectations. Until then, I will be back 1 week from today to talk about an episode of Batman the Animated Series, and 1 week after that to talk about the next episode of the Legion of Superheroes. Until then, be sure to come back throughout the week to see some of the other videos I have. I'll see you later.